What's up, everyone? It's Dakota, and I made a little bit of a boo boo when I did the intro. Of course, I meant to chill out for the channel. So, if you are not already subscribed to the channel and you want to see more of the podcast, and you want to see any more individual videos from myself, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, ring notification bell so you know when those videos get posted, and please be sure to check out the Modern with Randy channel. That's Randy's channel. He posts videos about Modern. Hasn't posted in a while, talked about doing it, so let's get him motivated to continue to post on his channel and maybe even do it more frequently as well. Of course, as well, I want any feedback that we can possibly get for the podcast, whether it's things that you want us to talk about, whether it's questions that you want answered, or if there's just things that we're not doing that you would like to see from the channel. We'll take them into consideration and kind of figure it out from there as we kind of get through the growing pains of a completely new show and trying to kind of figure out the right formula and stuff. So really appreciate it, and I hope you all stick around and enjoy the episode. Welcome, everyone, to the first episode of the Casual Spikes podcast. I am your co-host, Dakota, aka Crawday23, here on YouTube. Joining me is my other co-host, Randy from Modern with Randy. Say hi, Randy.
Hi, Randy.
God damn it.
No.
So we are going to be talking a lot about some interesting deck lists that really Randy found. I can't even really take credit for it. Randy found some sweet deck lists that were from the Modern prelim and some of the other challenges and things like that that are kind of worth going over. They performed really well, so I think they're at least worth talking about, taking a look. I'm going to let him take the lead on that because he's usually into that jank garbage. Me, the elite Chad meta gamer.
Okay, so first off, neither one of us are elite. We are both struggling to win tournaments like anyone else. But no, I thought we'd just go over some interesting lists or lists that we haven't seen in a while. Like the first list I had found was in one of the prelims on the 22nd. We had Belcher made a comeback, which hasn't been in the meta for God knows how long. I think I want to say at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years. I remember running into it when I was first getting back into Modern after COVID and everything, and pretending that Rhinos had a good matchup against that when it was live or die by force of negation. But it was interesting to see it come back in the prelim. Only one copy made in, nothing like major. It's not like we saw 16 copies in the prelim or anything crazy like that. But it's interesting seeing it come back, especially when you consider like what the top decks are anymore. With we still have like Team of Rhinos and Isn't Murktide still like being a good deck, along with like Rakdos Grief, which just gets to take your lands when you're playing Belcher, since you don't play any actual lands. So it is kind of crazy to see it doing well, or at least putting up a number, which, like I said, just haven't seen it in forever. So it was kind of interesting to see it. The deck hasn't changed, at least not to my knowledge of remembering playing against it. It's still playing all your normal, all the flip lands, the spell lands, whatever you want to call them, whatever you want to call them. Still playing all those, and then still just running 4 Charbelchers, 1 Pyromancer's Ascension, all the mana ramping spells, along with 4 pack negations. Basically, just acknowledging that we're going to need to counter some counter spells every now and then, in the sideboard, rocking the defense grid as just another way to protect itself against anybody. But nothing too amazing or special with it. Just surprising to see it come back and try to like make a little bit of a comeback.
Honestly, I looking at the list and giving it a glance over. For one, the fact that also at least the top 8 lists that it's showing, there's like 2 Rhinos decks and then there's 3 Murktide decks. So the fact that this deck, at least I'm assuming went either probably went 4-0 or like 3-1, probably 3-1. If it got like 6th, and the deck really hasn't changed except maybe a March of Reckless Joy being added to the list.
Yeah, March is a new one, which I mean it's a one of. It just seems like a way to help you not flood out. But I mean, like I said, it hasn't really changed much. Honestly, the biggest difference is I'm surprised it wasn't running any Blood Moons in the main, because I know that was one of the ways I've lost to Belcher before, where they just went turn 2 Blood Moon, and I was not prepared by fetching correctly, and just Got to see all my expensive mountains in play.
Hey, you know what? It's not a game of modern or even a tournament really. If you don't get turn 2 Blood Moon and you get caught with your whole pants down.
Oh yeah,
I'm talking
yeah.
about getting pants in the middle of the lunchroom and the underwear come down with the pants. Like, it is just embarrassing.
Oh yeah. It was great to see me just lose. Like it's great to lose the Blood Moon when you have Blood Moon in your sideboard. You're just like, ah, this is what it feels like. Huh.
You have like that internal soul searching moment where you're like, am I the bad guy? There's no way.
No. No, I
Really?
played Rhinos. Rhinos is a good guy.
Yeah, they just really want to give your opponent a hug so much so that they die.
Look, we're just trying to hug people until they get crushed. That's all we're trying to do with Rhinos.
Amen. I'll drink to that.
Uh,
All right. So
but
Belcher, I mean, essentially just really hasn't changed, but pretty interesting that it actually put up a result in a field that I would think is very hostile to Belcher.
yeah, I wouldn't say that Belcher is doing anything amazing or crazy. I don't think you should necessarily register it for your next tournament either. Um, Honestly, my biggest pet peeve with Belcher is usually it's too expensive for what you're getting out of the deck in the sense of like all the cards that you need to buy that are worth money are see zero play in any other deck. Like a lot of these like spell lands and whatnot are way too much money for what they do. Like that is what always kept me away from this deck because I never wanted to drop $300 on spells and cards that I can't play in another deck.
Which is totally understandable considering I, being the budget pro gamer that I am, I would definitely not like to buy spells that only work for one deck, and then when I'm done playing with it, I'm just kind of stuck with a bunch of bulk BS.
Oh yeah. Uh, Seagate Restoration is also like the biggest spell that I can't figure out why it's worth money. I've racked my brain about this, and my only assumption is that somehow EDH players are driving the cost of this card up one buy at a time. For anyone not familiar with it, it's the blue flip land that you can pay 3 life or to have it come into play untapped, or it's 7 mana spell sorcery. You get to draw cards equals to the number of cards in your hand plus one, and then you have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. This card is sitting at casually at $30.
I need to go check my like cycler like commander deck because I think I threw one in there.
Just casually get rid of it now while it's overly priced.
Might as well. I mean, it's not like I'm gonna play the format anyway, so
Uh,
might as well
but
get some use out of it.
oh yeah, but yeah, that's always been my biggest negative for this deck because I always think this deck is fun. I think it's interesting, and I've always wanted to take it to like FNM or like a low level tournament, and I can never justify all the spell lands that you have to buy that are just worth like casually five to $10 on average.
Yeah, yeah.
And and I was like, yeah, I'm too poor for this format.
At least there's definitely worse decks that you could be playing.
Speaking of worst decks,
Do you like how that's set up?
oh yeah, we are going back to a crowd favorite, one that most people hate playing against, the slippery boy himself, the Boggles.
For the record, I just want to be known by the 10 people that are gonna watch this episode that I love Boggles, even though I've never played it in any serious anything. I just love Boggles.
So I love that Magic Online exists because it lets me play Boggles and remember how bad that deck is.
Oh
Because
man.
every time I think the format is like this format seems great for Boggles, we're gonna jam it. I play it in a league and I go 1-4 and go, maybe the deck's not good.
Next format.
Which so at this prelim, it's crazy because Boggles got first overall, which means it went 4-0 easily. The crazy part about this though is when you look at the other 8 lists in the top 8, we have one, two, three, four Rakdos scams.
I mean,
So
there's a Rakdos aggro in there. I'm gonna
There
ignore
is.
the fact that it's probably a scam, but they play like I don't know.
It's scam. It's scam. Wizards can call it not scam. It's scam. We all know what the deck is. But if anyone has ever played Boggles or tried to play Boggles or done anything with it, they know that you play almost no creatures, and one Thoughtseize kind of just like screws your entire game plan over. So the fact that there was at least four Rakdos scam decks playing four Grief and four Thoughtseize main deck, and this deck was still able just to come out swinging, kind of impressive.
My guess is that our Aura Hexproof Boggle player is the luck god because I see four Lanolina Sanctity in here. So I would imagine they had like perfect sevens throughout like the whole four matches they played.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure that's what they are.
I mean that's like everybody else. Like they nut sevens and we're struggling to keep five.
Yeah, just every time I see Boggles do well, I just assume that someone made a pact with a demon somewhere to be able to win. That or I'm just incredibly unlucky with the deck.
Well, yeah, I mean they had to have
Okay,
because they're forced to register the cards Slippery Boggle and Glade Cover Scout in every modern deck that they play for the rest of their life.
is fair. I mean, the good news is though, like if you're looking for like a cheaper deck to have fun with or something you want to try to take something down with, this deck is relatively cheap, honestly. Um, Especially like if you've been playing in the modern format or anything along that nature, and you're gonna have, the lands which are basically the most expensive part of this list. So you have, the Windswept Heaths, the Temple Gardens, the Bridge. Well, Bridge of Risk, it's not expensive anymore. It got reprinted.
Womp
The
womp.
Besage Horizon Canopy is going to be like your land that most people don't have just because they haven't had to use it. But I mean, you're looking at like a $5 or $6 land. All your spells are worth nothing. All your spells are like $1 or under. Besides like Daybreak Coronet, which is worth a couple dollars, but I remember when that card was like a $20-$25 card. So it has definitely fallen hard
I
compared
think
to its.
I want to say that like I don't know, roughly 50% of the price of the deck is in Jesus Christ, in like seven cards between like
Uh,
Beseju, four Chalice, and then two Force of Vigor. I think it's like $300-$400.
yeah, I mean, and then like you can definitely get away with not playing for Chalice. Like, so I mean, like your deck, like Boggles can definitely beat Rhinos. That's not the problem. That Chalice is 100% in there for um the other
The
Cascade
living
deck,
the
Living
living
End.
end, yeah.
Yeah, because Boggles can't beat Living End as much as they would love to think they can. They can't because Living End doesn't destroy your creatures or you don't sac. Do you sacrifice? You don't
Uh,
destroy them though.
they get sacked. So like you take creatures from the graveyard, you set them aside, and then you sack everything in play, and then everything that was exiled with living end gets put into the battlefield. It's not exactly worded like that, but that's essentially what it is. Because instead of just destroy everything and then bring everything back, it's like you have to
Yeah,
separate the
it is sacrifice. I was just making sure. But
because
yeah, so that gets around all their like destroy effects and things like with the Umbras because they have that nice little totem armor that lets them, creature will be destroyed. Just get rid of this Umbra instead. Yeah, Living End just laughs at that and goes, hey, I know you got your two of your like four creatures you play out, but what if you didn't have them and I had 20 power?
by the way
Hmm?
you're dead next turn.
Yeah, but
That's what we call elite gaming.
yes, but it was interesting to see, Boggles put up a number. Again, a deck that I haven't seen in longer than uh Belcher. It's been at least 2 years since I've seen Boggles put up a number. Which I'm sure if we ever get a following, someone's going to point out. Actually, Boggles put up a number two, like 1.5 years ago.
I
I know because I play Boggles.
Randy, I made a video about why nobody played like Affinity, and I was immediately punished because then people started like playing the deck. But like before that, there was like no meaningful like finish with the deck at all. Or like the fact that it lost one of its best cards in like a banning and then like kind of fell off the face of the earth and was basically scrapped for parts for other like tier 1 modern decks.
I mean, that's fair. Like Affinity lost a lot.
I know that's a deck that I would uh I guess not necessarily see make a comeback because like playing those matchups were like super nerve-wracking, but I think like in today's climate it's kind of just whatever. It's like another aggro deck basically.
The problem is that Affinity just transferred into
The hardened
oh yeah,
scales.
yeah, Hardened Scales, because Hardened Scales is just better, and Hardened Scales gets to use Agates of Soul Cauldron as a win card,
Mm.
because that card's definitely fair and balanced.
Oh yeah, and once you finally finish your PhD for your math major and whatever, you'll actually be able to play the deck at a competent level.
Oh yeah,
I printed mine
there is.
off from Harvard, so legally I can register it for a tournament, but everyone else like has to have a proof and a stamp of approval from their university.
Mm, yeah, see, this is why I play Rhinos. I don't have to think. I just go 1, 2, 3, 10 power.
Herkader.
Exactly. Now, Rhinos is not nearly as brain dead as people make it out to be.
I mean, I'm just hoping that whoever I'm playing with that is playing Rhinos like cascades so much that they have to flip so many cards, like they're all at the bottom, and that eventually their hand locks up and they get carpal tunnel, and then they're so distraught that they're just immediately dropped from the tournament to seek medical help. That is how I'm beating Rhinos.
As a young player, I get that. Uh,
Oh man,
moving
spicy.
on, moving on to less crazy decks, I should say. We have the one Just Guy, as they called it, or just Guy control with the ring. Um, Again, nothing. This isn't anything too mind breaking or groundbreaking. We're not reinventing the format here, and we're basically just blue white. If we're being honest, like we're playing Fire Ice as our two red spells. So we are very generously calling ourselves Jeskai here. But basically I do think that this is when control is at least seemingly well positioned because we have a format that's relatively defined right now, with it being, we kind of know the top 5 decks of the format, with it being, Rakdos Scam, Yawgmoth, Rhinos, Murktide, Amulet Titan is usually like the top 5 decks. So if that's what you're thinking you're going to play against, like you can kind of make a game plan around that, or think about that and go, okay, this is what we can do. This is what we should do. Let's see what we get. So I mean, 23 lands for Solitude because that's the best, arguably the best elemental creature we have now.
R.I.P. Fury.
Yeah. Well,
Actually,
let me
no,
rephrase
fuck
that.
Fury. Like,
No,
keep it a
you
buck.
hate you hate Fury. I enjoy Fury. One of us plays small creatures though.
We
I'll
are
let
not the
I'll let
same.
I'll let the viewers decide who's playing small creatures.
I just like when I first started playing Young Wolf and people like have to spend a removal spell in combat to get rid of it completely. They were screaming it's not fair, but then Scam just like bullied me for bullying their tiny child, son, brother, whatever. And now I'm screaming that it's unfair. So then Fury had to go. Got shipped off to boarding school.
Yeah. So
Randy,
legacy it goes.
don't be too sad. Like it'll eventually come back in like 15 years from now when that's okay because everything is like 1 mana, 6 toughness.
Yeah. So but back to the deck. 23 lands. Only creatures just running are the 4 Solitude, 2 Subtleties, so it can run that Kahira companion. Then obviously we're playing 4 counter spells. Also playing 2 Force Indications. The 2 Fire Ice, so we can be quote Jeskai. Only two Lorien revealed, which seems a little low. Especially with this playing 23 lands, you think you want to try to hit your land drops a little more, but I mean, I'm not playing the deck. I didn't test this out, so I can't say what's right or wrong. Four prismatic ending to go along with our four leyline binding is our main source of removal outside of solitude, and then we have two supreme verdicts to round out our removal suite. Playing two Chalice of the Void main, which makes sense. We just notated that Team of Rhinos is one of the best decks in the format, or one of the biggest decks in the format, taking up somewhere between 10 and 15% of the meta at any given time. One dress down in the main seems a little weird. I'm not sure what that's exactly for. I mean, there's arguments obviously like it's good against Yawgmoth, it's good against Amulet Titan overall because you can slow them down a turn, make them wait. For Teferi, which I have to imagine is because of Rhino still being one of the best decks in the format, as well as I think Teferi does help out against a lot of different little problematic things, slowing your opponent down, making them play at your speed essentially. And then of course four rings, because obviously it is the one just guy to rule them all.
You know, while you're kind of going through it, I'm guessing the reason why it plays 23 lands and then just like two Lorien revealed. I'm assuming like 23 lands, 23 plus two Lorien, whatever, is like enough to get to 4 mana, like on turn 4 consistently, so you can play the ring, and then I'm assuming like when you add the card advantage from the ring, like you just hit your land drops from there. Would be my guess as to why
I mean,
it plays like 23 instead of like 27 or like 26 lands.
that is fair. I was gonna say most of what the control decks that I'm used to are all pre ring, so you didn't just have infinite card advantage from one magic card that also gave you protection for everything.
And there's also too, I mean, like the fact that in the mana base as well, aside from like the usual like utility land in like Otawara, there's a Manamo School at Water's Edge, so you can actually untap the ring and get multiple activations in a turn.
Oh yeah, the the secret tech that we've known about now since I think the ring came out.
I want to say I think I saw it at like the Apex Invitational because like we were talking before we actually got on and started recording that the lone Jeskai like control player I think was playing like one or two copies of Manamo in their deck so they could essentially do the same thing. I mean that's kind of the reason for playing it.
Yeah, I mean, basically any control deck that I've seen in the last at least 6 months playing the ring is playing the Manamo to go with it. Like blue black control with the ring has been probably one of the biggest control decks I've seen running around, or biggest percentage of the control decks running around, and it's always been playing the one Manamo just to get there with being able to draw so many extra cards. And of course we have Teferi to reset our rings when it gets a little too high.
Yeah. Oh, I mean even in a way because it like I think to like the normal person is like okay cool you can tap your ring twice you can draw a bunch of cards but you're still going to take like a ton of damage like once it gets up to 5 you're taking 5 damage but the fact that like you take 5 damage to draw like 9 cards potentially or in 9 cards you could just find an out to your own ring to like reset it and then possibly
Mm-hmm.
even play another one to get the protection and then kind of get the ring going again. I mean, Necro was like one of the most broken cards of all time, and you had to pay 1 life to draw 1 card. Yawgmoth Bargain, 1 life to draw 1 card. Manamo just makes it so you have like a super discounted rate. Essentially like 1 life for 2 cards, which is insane.
Mm-hmm.
And like any Magic player would be like, chomping at the bit, foaming at the lips, etc., etc. Every other boomer like quote you can think of to like get multiple ring activations a turn for like the cost of a few life.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it's one of the biggest resources that's not used correctly, I think, in Magic for sure. Is that people, especially, I mean, casuals, new players don't understand that like your life total is 100% a resource. Like that. I mean, the ring I think is the best example of this. Well, maybe not the best example, but like it's one of those things where like you use your life as a resource, like you said. Like even like if you have the ring on two, just going from two up to three and then up to four You just drew 7 cards with 1 activation, and you took 2 damage on your upkeep to do it.
Right, yeah.
Like, it's just, oh cool. I now have drawn a full new grip plus what was ever in my hand. I should be fine.
Essentially for 2 mana too in that way. I mean, and of course, like historically speaking, we've had like Wheel of Fortune, Time Twister, Days Undoing, whatever. These are all like effects that let you draw 7 cards for 3 mana, and effectively you can do it for 2 in this deck, with the right
Hmm.
conditions.
Exactly. Which,
And I think to your point, the ring, while maybe not like a what's the word I'm looking for, I think not being a good example of like life total being a resource, but definitely like a good way of like showing somebody, because if you show anybody the One Ring, they're like, and they know anything about Magic, they know that this is a powerful card.
mhm,
So I think when like with Necro's case, it was like, well, there's a drawback to it, so it can't be that good, and the One Ring has no inherent drawback to it if you played Magic for about 5 seconds. So I think the fact that, to like the casual player, they look at it, they see that it's powerful, and then you tell them, yeah, there's a deck that you can activate this effect multiple times, is like super easy for the person to pick up and be like, wow, that's powerful. And then when you further put it in the context of there's cards that do the same thing, but you have to spend 3 mana, and in some cases that's your turn, like it now your turn is over, but now
yeah,
you get to take game actions after getting to draw 7 cards, is like sickening. Absolutely
agreed.
sick.
Which brings us to our next deck here, because you were talking about Days Undoing, which is one of the cards that I remember when it came out with when we had Narset Days Undoing, people were kind of losing their mind and like, oh, this is going to be broken. Um, it brings us to the next control deck that is actually doing well, the Azorius control deck that has been running around. Which, I mean, obviously it's blessing for the Triumph, so we can play Leyline Binding for cheaper as well. But this is more what you're used to, I would say, for seeing a control deck. Still running only 22 lands and 2 Lorien Revealed, so still cutting on the lands as a whole. Uh, Still has the 4 Solitude, only one subtlety in this list. We can play the Kira. Obviously, 4 counterspells, 2 Force Negations, 2 Lorien Reveals, 4 Preordains, 4 Dramatic Endings, 3 Supreme Verdicts, 3 Leyline Bindings, 3 Teferis, 4 Rings, and then we're also running the 3 Narsets and 1 Days Undoing in the main deck.
Mm-mm-mm.
Which, if anyone doesn't know what we're talking about, I'll just go over it real quick. So Narset has this neat little ability that says each opponent can't draw more than 1 card a turn. This little static ability. Days Undoing essentially is each player shuffles his or her graveyard and library, and then draws, or hand, graveyard, and library together, and then draw 7 cards. If it's your turn, you end the turn.
Yes,
So
sir.
with Narset's ability here, you get to effectively get a brand new grip while they go down to 1 card. Because they can't draw more than 1 card each turn. It's your turn, so they get to draw 1 card on your turn.
Mm-hmm.
Effectively, you get to go whatever cards they had in hand is now down to 1. And then we're also running the Gaia Reach Sanctorium as
Yeah.
well in the land base, which for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's it's a legendary land, taps for colorless, so then pay 2, each player draws a card, then discards a card. So if your opponent is Hellbent or well basically if your opponent's Hellbent, you can go on their upkeep, activate Gaia Reach Sanctorium. They'll draw a card, then discard that card immediately. Then Narset tells you that they can't draw another card, so they effectively stay Hellbent until the end of time. And eventually you will find a way to play either Subtlety or Solitude or bring in Kihira from the sideboard and beat them down. You eventually just get to lock out your opponent.
It's days like these that I wish that I guess no pun intended. That I wish we had like 5 minutes of fairy. Even though
to
I,
end the game just slightly faster.
yeah, I mean, just like you have like the Kihira on the sideboard, you have like one Teferi, your opponent never casts a spell. You're like, okay, I'm just gonna draw till I ultimate, and then I'm just going to exile your lands one by one and force you to like discard your card to then eventually just like get my Kihira and beat you down. Like a clear path to victory.
No, we need 5 mana Teferi so we can keep tucking our 5 mana Teferi so we never actually deck ourselves, and eventually our opponent will deck themselves.
Disgusting. We'll
Yeah, so that's the true way to play control.
and we'll play
For
one
anybody remembering standard like 6 years ago, probably now at this point, where that was a legitimate win con.
doing that in the same deck that had like oh shoot, the extra turn spell that I
Oh
forget.
yeah,
A Nexus of Fate.
yeah.
You just Nexus, you take all the turns, you to Fairy Emblem, then you continue to take all the extra turns until your opponent has no permanents, and you say, okay, you can have a turn now.
So I will. The only reason I point out these two control decks, because usually like seeing a one-off Azorius deck or whatnot is not that interesting. But TSP Gendrick has been on a tear. He's showed up, I think, in at least 3 or 4 of these, and I just kind of wanted to point out like he has clearly found something that's working. Because like I said before, I think that control is in this weird position where it is in a good position because we know roughly what the metagame is, and so you can have like this idea of what to take, what to bring, what you need in your sideboard and such. So I do think that he might have cracked the code, so to speak, or found out a way to really hone in on the meta and essentially take it down.
Yeah, I
I
would
mean, I
agree with that.
I could be wrong. It could just be TSP Gendrick doing TSP Gendrick things and just like winning with a ham sandwich because he knows how to play control better than most of us do. But it is interesting that he was able to hone in essentially and top eight in at least 3 or 4 of these prelims.
Definitely, if you give a good player a deck that they're comfortable with, eventually, I mean, I think that more often than not, they're going to crack through in some way. And I mean, these decks, at least on the surface, seem like they're doing something like relatively powerful, aside from just the typical like control strategy.
I do think Narset's interesting, just because I think it shuts down a lot of incidental card draw essentially, and like it really shuts down Yawgmoth because like Yawgmoth has ways to answer planeswalkers, but its ways to answer planeswalkers is this way it answers everything. Basically, it's just Grist. So
Oh yeah,
I think that like, but Narset being able to shut down Yawgmoth to where it can only draw, one card on its opponent's turn, kind of like invalidates that deck in a
yeah,
sense of like that is your whole reason for playing the deck the way it is like Yawgmoth lets you, just set up to where like, okay, I know I'm playing against control. They're gonna board wipe me. It's not gonna matter because I'm gonna draw, 7, 8, 10 cards because my life total doesn't matter. And it's like, well, I'm gonna play Narset on turn 3 before you can do any of that, and then I'm gonna board wipe you, and you're not gonna get to basically draw any cards.
there's only like a few scenarios that come to mind where like a board or a Narset on board is like kind of whatever, and they involve like 15 different pieces that just like, of course, like you don't care because you can make as many snakes as you want and then cord for the thing that you need to win the game.
Yeah, it's those scenarios where
Yep.
like you've already won the game. Basically, it's just like I just have to make sure my opponent can't interact, and they go, "Well, I got Narset. Like, cool. I'm gonna still win. It doesn't matter. I don't need to draw cards. I just need to make sure that you're not gonna stop me."
Yeah, like I said, the most obvious one that comes to mind is like you already have like your Yawgmoth Undying Creature, and then you have a Hapatra on board, and then you just make a bunch of snakes, and then you cord for Blood Artist, and like yeah, then of course Narset like looks bad, but in just about every other scenario where you're normally just like waiting for 1 or 2 cards to show up, Narset is definitely a super feel bad.
Hmm.
Big Sad has entered the chat. Get this control deck off my screen. I don't want to look at it anymore.
All right. Well, we have one more control deck.
No.
Really, I only put this up here because we were talking about on our first one about some of our favorite cards, and I talked about how Esper Charm It's one of my favorites, and this is an Esper control list.
Oh,
Not playing
stop.
any Esper charms because he wanted to win or
Oh,
she
okay.
wanted to win. I'm gonna guess he because it's Stevo is the name, but
Sivo Bobivo.
I I will not assume in this day and age that it is a him. But honestly, there's nothing too insanely special about this. Honestly, it looks like the blue. It looks like the blue black control deck that we see all the time, just splashing white to have Solitude, Timeless Dragon, ironically enough, and then we get Prismatic Ending, Reprieve, Leyline Binding because that card is broken, and Teferi. Basically, it looks like it's just a deck that was designed to be the blue black control deck, and then also one of just it wants to make sure that it beats Cascade is what it looked like it was doing. Because we have prismatic ending, which is good against Cascade, because one mana gets rid of half the rhinos. Reprieve, which is really good against Cascade, we can just to bounce the Cascade spell back to their hand. Teferi, obviously good against Cascade. Just seems like it was really trying to I want to make sure that Cascade doesn't beat me. This looks like someone who played the blue black control list a lot. It was like I keep losing to rhinos, and I shouldn't lose to rhinos. I'm gonna make sure I don't lose to rhinos. I'm done with it.
Notably, too, of like the 3 control decks that we've looked at, this is the only list that is playing Tishana's Tidebinder anywhere in the 75.
It is, which is kind of surprising, honestly. I'm surprised to see that. I guess most of the control list probably just assume they have everything else covered in the sense of like you're playing counterspell, playing leyline binding, you're playing fairy. Like what could time binder really be for? Like what do you really need it for? Type deal
Which is
is my
understandable.
which I mean I can understand. Like I can even see cutting tie binder in this list as well. I can see going up another Shieldred just because somehow this card is broken.
True. Even in modern,
And
like, still wins the game.
yep, the card still makes me sad. Wizards, please just reprint this to Oblivion.
For anyone curious, if you didn't watch the episode 0, where we kind of like introduced ourselves, answered questions, etc., Randy wanted that card to be $2, and since then I think it's went up like over $20.
I want to point out that the last time I looked at Shieldreds, which arguably wasn't too long ago, it was back during the RC, the Atlanta RC. It was like a $70 card. As of right now, looking at it on TCG Player, just for lowest listings, it's now 83 with a market price of 93.
Card Kingdom has it for $99.99 near mint.
Every day we stray farther from God,
My
closer
goodness.
to the apocalypse that is Shieldred.
My God. That's nuts. That card, it's in standard. It's still in standard.
Yeah, it is still in standard sets or standard packs that you can go right now and buy for like $5.
You remember Jace Vryn's Prodigy? The one that was like 4 copies in every deck in every top 8 for the end of time,
Yes,
and how it
that
like
was $100+
did it ever get to $100+? I remember being like $70-$80 for like
It,
ever.
it got to $100. It got to 90 for sure. Because I remember at the time I bought 2 boxes, listeners, 2 boxes of that set. Or I
Mm,
think I won a box and bought another box and opened more packs than I ever should have of that set. I never opened a Jace.
oof.
Ironically, though, because I never opened Jace, this is how I ended up getting stuck in a uh, blue black Coco deck, like the blue black, Jesus, green black Coco deck that like sacrifice, drain your opponent,
Oh,
things like that. Basically, what the Coco deck was doing, but mine was a lot more streamlined. Didn't have any blue, didn't have anything else. We couldn't buy back our Cocos, but
mm.
I opened up 3 of the lilies, so we were playing that girl. That girl,
Oh yeah, that
and
that that was like the green black, like not cutthroat deck. It was like you made a big
Crystallizing Rites.
Nantuku husk. Yeah.
Yeah, Crystallizing Rites. Because then we also played the land, the one that you could pay 5 mana and a life and get a 1/1,
Yep.
or flip it.
Yeah, flip it into Ormondal. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was gas. That deck was gas.
Uh, I had so much fun with that deck because that's how I won some buys for my first Legacy GP.
Dirty, dirty standard.
Yep.
How far we've come. Jace,
Yeah.
Jace walked so Shieldred could crawl. I guess I don't think you can walk when you have 18 legs.
Uh,
I guess how many guess how at what point how many legs do you have to have where it's not considered walking anymore? It's considered crawling.
I think Shieldred has enough because she's on
Shieldred
her art.
counts.
I think she has like 8 legs on her art, and it looks like she's still longer than what we're showing. So, but Shieldred's ungodly prices aside, I just kind of wanted to point out this Esper control list because Esper's always been a little close to my heart, despite never actually playing it that much.
I guess too. Just because I want to point it out, and it's not a card that you see all that often. And I think that's the OG. Is that the original Modern Horizons, or is that still two?
Which one?
Oh, that's MH2. Timeless Dragon.
Yeah, Timeless Strike. Yeah, that card used to see play a lot in these control decks because it was, something you could cycle early on for a land, and then you also was a creature, mid to late game. It's still a 4/4 flying creature. Um, but thanks to Lorien reveal, that card has gotten invalidated very fast.
Speaking of Lord, man, I guess now looking at it, it's like one of those pictures where like it gets worse the more you look at it. So this version, aside from playing just Tashana's Tidebinder, where the Blue Eye Control and the Jeskai Control decks were not playing that, this deck is playing Timeless Dragon. Obviously, it's playing black, so it can play Shieldred. It's not
Hmm.
playing any subtlety anywhere,
Yeah, no subtleties at all.
and then no Lorien revealed.
Yep. They opted for the Timeless Dragon instead. This definitely seems like a deck that also wanted to like win the game at some point.
Yeah,
Like, because we have the Thassa's Timebinder, we have 4 Bowmasters, 2 Shielders, 4 Solitude, 2 Timeless Dragon. But we have way more creatures than the last control decks we were looking at. I also want to point out they have a temporary lockdown in the sideboard, which is unusual.
yeehaw. You want to get my jimmies ruffled? Show me a temporary lockdown.
Yeah, it's different. I haven't seen that. Like they have 2 in the sideboard, just like casually chilling.
I need to get. I'm off. I'm off this. This is crazy. This is absolutely nuts. Like the
Uh,
the the difference. There's 3 different control decks. I mean, 2 of them that made top 8 in the same prelim, and then this one a completely different one, going for an entirely different game plan, and also finding success in a world with rhinos and getting scammed and doctors performing, you know, things against the Geneva Convention.
I don't know if Yawgmoth is technically a doctor.
I don't know. I hear
Just
him called the
just
doctor.
that, I mean that's fair. All right, so this is our last like I don't know. I don't have a good one for this. It's a mill. It's mill. There's not really much to say about this.
Mill.
I will point out though, mill has finally adopted into the white splash this time with playing 4 Get Lost, 4 Path to Exile, and 2 Teferi Time Rubber in the main.
Oh my good god.
Yeah. So he this person wanted to have some removal spells. Um, on top of that, they're playing Leyline of Sanctity in sideboard for the white splash and 9 lives.
Wow.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
what? All right. So hold on. I'm gonna read this out loud because I have no idea what this does. So, it's a 3 mana enchantment. It has hexproof. If a source would deal damage to you, prevent that damage and put an incarnation counter on 9 lives. If there are 9 or more incarnation counters on 9 lives, exile it. When it leaves the battlefield, you lose the game.
mhm.
Wow.
Also notice it has suppression field as well
Oh my
in
good
the
god.
sideboard. Just Yeah, it's one of the weirdest mill decks that I've seen in a long time. Um, so I'm not 100% sure what they were cooking or what
That
they were doing, but I mean they were able excuse me, they were able to get some in place, so clearly they did something right. But it is just a different take on mill to say the least. Outside of that though, it's relatively similar with we have the eight crabs, we have archive trap, we have fractured sanity, they have preordain as well, which is not one you normally see.
wow, 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 wow.
Um,
In a world
which
with,
is
go ahead.
okay.
Sorry.
I say preordain usually isn't played. They usually play that one mana, draw one card. If there's 20 more cards in the graveyard, draw three instead. It's just you get to play power level card for one mana.
I, I
So
would
I'm not
I would like to point out that it is Visions of Beyond, and I would like to thank Demonic Tutors for teaching me that because he has definitely spent way too much time playing Mill.
that necessarily yeah, but like I don't know why you're playing preordain over visions.
I
Like
want to say that specifically for Bowmaster. Drawing three cards in the face of a Bowmaster versus drawing one with the card selection might just be better.
I mean that's you're not wrong.
That's just my guess. Whether it's better or not, I have not picked up a Hedron crab or a ruined crab, so
Um, I will say I have played a lot of Hedron Crab. I have never I have never used it to target my opponent. I have played a lot of Vengevine trying to make that deck good.
you know what? And I played a lot of Hogak and Legacy for a short time, so I get it.
All right,
Target
but
yourself with
that
the crab kids. Yeah, we're good. We're good with that.
yeah, well that's pretty much all the prelim decks I found that were interesting or doing something different or doing something we haven't seen in a minute. Going back to the challenges from last weekend though, that would be the 20th for anyone who's not keeping track. We had Teamer Aggro in a third place, which I mean, it is just blue. It's just blue red prowess basically, but we're playing three questing druid in the spot where you would see yeah, that little dragon that gets +1 for every time you play a spell.
Oh, Sprite Dragon.
Right? Yeah, Sprite Dragon. So nothing too crazy. We're playing 17 lands, which basically boils down to four steam vents, two stomping ground, two mountains, and then the rest is just fetch lands. We're playing, four Darcy, four Monastery Swiftspear, three Questing Druid, four Soul Scarred Mage, and then we got our Expression of Alliteration, Lava Dart, Lightning Bolt, Preordain, all as four ofs, along with two Mutagenic Growth, two Unholy Heat, one Wild Slash, which I have to just imagine is there because of rings.
That would be my guess. Yeah.
And then we have four Mister's Bobble, and of course the three Underworld Reach.
Sick.
But it was interesting, to see this deck kind of dust off and show up again because it hasn't been seen here for a little bit. I know anyone who's followed Doomwake or watched Doomwake, he pretty much had written this deck off as not playable or not something you should be wasting your time with, essentially. Which obviously, someone else felt differently and took it to a third place finish in a field uh, where I don't think that this deck is particularly well positioned.
Yeah, I would lean towards agreeing on that. Like, I definitely don't think anything really in the top eight is. I mean, it either beat Chord Creativity or Scam, which I'm
Yeah,
guessing it probably played like Creativity.
that would be my guess.
I mean, I'd
Being able
imagine
to
that
go.
that's just free. It feels like.
Hmm. And then, I mean, they definitely had a sideboard geared towards beating rhinos with three Flusterstorm, three Spell Pierce.
Even looking at like this top eight, like or top 16, even I don't see any Rhinos list. Of course, it's probably the 16th list. No, Chord.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I will say if you look at this top 16 of the challenge on the 20th, we are seeing nothing. Like the only two surprising decks are Teamer Aggro or Prowess and Creativity, which we haven't seen in a long time. But it's literally Scam, Murktide, Yogg are the only other three decks. Like
Yeah.
I hate to say that Modern is a solved format, but like we have pretty much gotten to this point where you are going to like these are the decks you're going to see. You're going to see Scam, you're going to see Murktide, you're going to see Yogg, you're going to see Titan, and you're going to see Rhinos. Like obviously Rhinos didn't make the top 16 this time, which could be for 100 different reasons. I know this week I was playtesting Rhinos for the RC coming up in Denver, and like I went 1-4 in my league. Like I just had some absolutely atrocious draws and plays, and like Rhinos is it's not like Rhinos. I think is one of the best decks you can take to the format, but it's like any other deck. You draw 5 lands in a row, or you draw you keep a 2 land hand and never see your third land. You're not gonna win. Like it's just it doesn't matter how good you are or how prepared you are or whatever BS you need to tell yourself. Like there are just games that you will lose no matter what you do if you do not see more spells or you don't see any lands.
1000%. I can agree with that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's the same thing with like Murktide or anything else. So definitely had some feel bads this week playing Rhinos, but it is crazy. Basically like there's what 4 different decks, not counting Teamer Aggro and Creativity, because it was Yogg, Gam, Murktide, Titan. So basically, 4 out of the 5 decks that we are deemed the top 5 of the format were in the top 16. Who would have guessed it?
Yeah, I want to say, I mean, just between Scam and Yawgmoth, they're 9 of the top 16 decks from this challenge.
Hmm.
And of course, there was 4 Scam and 1 Toolbox deck in the top 8.
Yeah, along with Teamer Aggro and Creativity. But
Yeah,
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 just
yeah. I mean, that was just more of just referencing
oh
those
no,
two
you're good.
strategies.
I mean, once again, scam somehow lost one of its 2 cards at scamming and is still putting up half of the top 8.
Yeah, I mean, I would say successful in its banning because it went from like 30% to like 15%, which, when you normally cut someone's metagame share directly in half as a result of a banning, you usually do a pretty good job. Just you had a tier 0 deck or a tier point 0.5 deck and then made it just tier 1.
Yeah. So moving on, obviously we're going to talk about the creativity deck because again, we haven't really seen creativity here in a while.
And I
With
absolutely love creativity, by the way. Like, this is a deck that I was actually going to switch to instead of playing Yawgmoth, either at the beginning of last year or like the middle of 2022, roughly around that time.
Interesting. I will say I don't think creativity is a bad deck as a whole. I think that creativity has gotten worse though since we got Tasha's Tidebinder.
Yeah,
Because I will say that as a Rhinos player, creativity was a tough matchup. And it's still not like great when you look at this list of uh 3 protect ending, 3 reprieve, 3 spell pierce that we're fighting through, along with 3 Teferi.
mm-hmm.
But being able to stop Archon is not nothing. Being able to counter that ability and then making it basically just a 6/6 flyer, or I guess it would just be a six
Yeah.
six.
It's just a big beefy boy.
Yeah, is pretty good. That being said, though, I don't think that this deck is terrible going into the meta. So I mean, I think that if you have the cards or this is something you're thinking about building, it's not a terrible buy or build. Like you still are playing, good cards. Like you're still playing, like I said, Reprieve, Spell Pierce. You have Fables. You're playing Leyline Bindings, Teferi, Renin Six. It's not like you're playing, bad cards by any stretch of the imagination. I will point out that he was playing an Ellis Norn, Grand Cenobite.
OG Elish
Yeah,
Norn.
yeah, the OG Ellis Norn. The one that no one plays. Definitely seems like this man did not want to lose to Yogg.
I mean, like you're really I think you, in a way, kind of fix a lot of the matchups because I would imagine even against like rhinos, like they're just 2/2 tramplers, and then everything
Yeah,
else just doesn't survive when it enters. Like I guess
yeah.
minus like subtlety.
I will say Ellis Norton is pretty good if you're worried about playing into a bunch of Tashas because like you can't Tidebinder a static ability.
Right. And
So
and at that point too, like they have to get rid of the Elish Norn because then if Shauna comes in, I think it'll get to counter the ability, but
yeah, is it
it won't continue to shut it off.
exactly? And then they also were playing two Terracodons in the sideboard.
Hot. I love it.
Yeah, so for anyone not familiar with this, a wonderful world break rare, it is a six. What is it? Six, 8 mana. I don't know why I can't do basic math. 6 + 2. It's an 8 mana 9/9 elephant. When it enters the battlefield, you may destroy up to 3 target non-creature permanents. For each permanent destroyed, or I'm sorry, for each permanent put into the graveyard this way, a controller creates a 3/3 elephant creature token.
Mm-mm-mm. So like yeah, Terracodon is pretty nasty, and notably for the people that probably have never thought about it, also probably have never even seen this card too. If you're like newer to competitive Magic, because it's not a competitively viable card, and 99% of the time, you can target your own things so that you create the elephants instead of blowing up your opponent's like lands or whatever and giving them tokens,
Yeah,
which
I
I
do.
I think is something that at least newer players don't really think about when they play a card like this. There's like, I don't want to give my opponent 9 power worth of things. It's like, well, you don't have to. You can give yourself something too.
Mhm. But I'd say I won't. I don't necessarily understand what the Terracodon is 100% for. I'm not sure what matchup you're really wanting to bring that in.
Creature. I mean, yeah, I would imagine
Well,
in.
I actually I wonder almost. Do you just bring this in against the Amulet Titan decks?
I mean, you probably could.
Well, because I wonder if that's what they're thinking, right? So like if you just go ideally, because like ideally you're going to take out your Archons for Terracodons,
Right.
and then
Yeah.
your goal is to go turn 4 creativity and hit Terracodon and just blow up 3 of Amulet Titan's lands. Like, yeah, I get that you're giving them 9 power, but like we have ways to answer a 3/3 token.
Right.
But if we can just like, hey man, you just lost all your ability to set up, and I bought myself infinite time because my 9/9 can just sit here. Like, okay, you want to attack me for 9? That's cool. I'm gonna take 6 and eat one of your tokens. I'm gonna play, Teferi next turn and bounce one of your tokens, and I'm gonna start bashing you for 9.
Right. I mean, yeah, you can definitely leverage in those scenarios where you're just like, I'm gonna blow up 3 of your things.
Mm-hmm.
Amulet 2 of their lands. You're probably not gonna strand them on lands, but the fact that you killed a ton of their development is going to be
Yeah, but you're
huge in your
just
favor.
you're putting them back to literally the Stone Age. Like they are starting from turn 1 at this point.
I just don't trust. I don't trust them. I would almost want this to be like a Woodfall Primus, and even though it's only one thing that you would get to blow up, uh, I don't know. It at least to me seems like a less of a chance for it to backfire in a
I mean,
way.
that's fair. Like I said, I'm not like I said, I don't know what this is for. I'm not pretending that I have worked on the creativity deck for the last like year and a half. Going, I understand. I see the lines. I see the Terracodons on my ceiling at night.
Shout out to Queen's Gambit.
But that is the first thing that comes to my mind. I'm sure one of our like 2 people that listen to this podcast will be like, actually, this is what it's for, because we'll just be
That's
happy that
how it
someone talked
happens.
about creativity.
I mean, like creativity before, you would just play like Archons, and then you had an Emrakul in the sideboard, or you had a Sarah's Emissary, and like
Hmm.
that was like your additional targets for a creativity. And I mean, like, uh, what's its good? I mean, The Emrakul is like fantastic, but with Leyline bindings, running amok and solitudes and things like that, it just,
Yeah,
chances are it's going to die.
exactly. So I do wonder what this card was for. But other than that, I think that like I mean you're looking at pretty much a stock list for the most part. I mean they have like one expression iteration, one fire ice, which is kind of different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, three spell pierce is probably a concession to the cascade matchup. I'm gonna guess, or like a notation like hey, that is a deck that's running around. I need to have answers to it along with early scam interaction type deal. So but I mean, and then the sideboard's pretty much makes sense. Alpine Moon, another one expression iteration of the sideboard. I'm not sure exactly what that's for. My guess is maybe just the grinding matchups, maybe the Murktide matchups, things where you want to see more cards. You have your one planes, which is for the any deck you think is going to bring in Blood Moon against you. That way you can still cast your Leyline bindings, even if it's for 4 mana.
Amen.
Two silence, which I have to imagine is for any kind of combo decks running around. It's good against the Cascade decks. As again, they go to Cascade. You cast a Cascade spell, you silence them in response, so they can't Cascade this turn. You have Veil of Summer, which I'm 100% sure is for scam and nothing else.
Yeah, I would say aside from uh, the targets for the Indomitable Creativity and having the expressive iteration in the sideboard, this is pretty much like what you would have typically seen, I think, from this
Hmm.
creativity deck.
Yeah, and then obviously Wear Tears for any kind of artifact or enchantment removal you're going to need, especially for like Blood Moons, things like that. Just extra things of that, and I'm sure for the scale stacks that runs around or any kind of artifacts that you're trying to hit. Even probably brings it in for um, Amulet Titan. I could see because Wear Chair gets to hit uh, the Amulet obviously, and then also gets to hit the Urza Saga if you need to, or if they go turn one Urza Saga, just being able to blow up their land on turn one seems pretty broken.
You can hit their Dryad as well if they're trying to set up
Yeah,
for like the Valakut kill as well.
yep, Dryad as well. Just it's another removal spell that's better than your three lightning bolts that you're definitely not keeping in.
That are gonna kill like a sleepy boy, and that's about it. And they're gonna get their value from it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And then I have one more deck that I found this week that seemed real interesting in the challenge. The other challenge on the 20th, Happy Cat was here,
Heck yeah.
which for anyone not familiar with that deck as a whole, because it hasn't really seen playing a long time. You're playing Felidor Guardian, which is a 4 mana 1/4. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile another target permanent you control, and then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. And so that combos with Kiki Jiki, the Mirror Breaker. He's a 5 mana 2/2, 3 red, 2 colorless, or 2 generic, sorry.
No, you're
Haste,
good.
and he has put a creature token into play that's a copy of target non-legendary creature. You control that creature token has haste, sacrifice at the end of turn. So you can play Felidar Guardian, and the next turn play Kiki Jiki. Tap Kiki Jiki because it has haste to target Felidar Guardian. New token, the copy comes in, it blinks Kiki Jiki. Kiki Jiki now untapped. Repeat this process until you can swing with enough to kill your opponent. And then we also have 2 copies of uh, excuse me, of the Planeswalker, Saheeli. So she's 3 mana Planeswalker, has 3 loyalty, +1 has scry 1 that deals 1 damage to each opponent, and then -2. The whole reason we're playing her is she creates a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature you control, except that artifact in addition to each other types. This token gains haste, exile at the beginning of the end step. So same thing. You play Felidar Guardian. You use Saheeli's -2 to make a token of Felidar Guardian. You blink Saheeli. She comes back with 3 loyalty as a new Planeswalker, and repeat this process until you can kill your opponent. And then basically everything around it is just either value or ways to draw or stay alive or filter in to get your spells or combo.
Yeah, I think this is secretly just an Omnath Locus of mana deck in disguise.
I mean, I don't disagree. I do kind of like this list. So we're running 22 lands, 4 delayed halflings. That way we can make our spells that we need to resolve uncounterable. Our Sahili, which is a legendary creature or planeswalker. Kiki is a legendary creature. Plus, excuse me, we have 4 rings, 3 Run and 6, and 3 Teferi Time Ravelers. All good spells that either ramp out or not be able to be countered with Delayed Halflink, the 3 Guardians, the 1 Kiki, the 2 Omnath, Locus of Creation. It's the one everyone knows about. It's the 4 mana one. It does all the broken things. Uh, for anyone who maybe is new to Modern or has never seen this card because they're living under a rock or whatever, uh, 4 mana, red, green, white, blue, 4/4. When it comes to the play, draw a card. And then landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield for the first time under your control, you gain 4 life. If it's the second time, you get Omnath's mana back. And then if it's the third time, he deals 4 damage to each opponent and each planeswalker you don't control.
Mm-hmm.
And then playing 4 Solitude, because obviously that's the best one to play now if you're trying to remove anything.
Yep, yep, yep.
And then the one Eladamri's Call is kind of weird.
Don't tell me it's weird. We know why it's here.
3 Prismatic Ending, 3 Fable, 4 Leyline Binding, 2 Sahili, 4 Teferi, 4 Ring, 3 Run. So all normal numbers, but definitely a deck that we haven't seen in quite a long time again, putting up numbers. Or putting up a number, I should say. Um, I'm not sure if this is necessarily something you want to be doing. I do agree with you that it's just something that someone's like, I really want to play the Omnath again, but I don't have a good shell for it right now. What can I do?
So like it, yeah. I mean, it's. I think it plays like a decent. Like I think it can grind a little bit. I think Omnath is just kind of a messed up card anyway. So like you just have like these different things you can sink the mana into. Conveniently, Omnath gives you enough mana to cast like the One Ring. So like you're eventually just gonna like drown your opponent in cards and
Mhm.
combo kill them if they don't die of boredom first.
I do think that this deck doesn't seem terrible against Yawgmoth. It has like the grind factor against Yawgmoth. Um, Against Isn't Murktide, it can kind of gum up the ground a little bit, and then you have Solitude and Omnath to gain life and remove like the Murktides and things like that. Um, Rakdos Grief or Grief, Rakdos Scam.
Yeah.
I think that you can beat that deck as well with this. I think that yeah, I mean, obviously getting double scammed is always you know crappy, but you have the One Ring, you have to ferry, you have ways to kind of get back into the game type deal. So I think this deck might not be horrendous there. Obviously, I would need to play some more or play with it and kind of actually see how that matchup works out. But if we're talking about the top 5 decks, you have kind of game against at least 3 of them. I think against Rhinos, obviously you can beat it. You have Fairy, which is a challenge for them. You have the One Ring that can buy you time with it. You still have you know Omnath and such and Solitude for removal spells and life gain. So it's not like you're just dead to Rhinos even.
Yeah, a little unfortunate for at least the copycat players that Sahili puts herself to just one loyalty when you have to activate her. Just it is another way that you get opened up for just random fires or 1 damage spells to go at your Sahili.
Hmm.
When you think you kind of have that cleared window, and turns out you
Yeah,
you kind of didn't.
yeah, or Bowmasters even.
Yeah, I mean it just kind of in a way kind of awkward, but I mean aside from that, I mean it's got a powerful combo that beats your opponent through infinite life. For the 2 decks in the format that can do that. Gets to play
Hmm.
the One Ring, which is mildly annoying for a lot of decks. And then you just end up drawing enough cards where you can combo, and you're playing the most toxic 4 color creature in Magic currently.
Yeah, I mean, essentially it does everything you want it to do, and it can win through any kind of board state too. Whether it's you're playing against Yawgmoth and the board state's all gummed up. Well, it's all right, cool. How many creatures do you have? I'm gonna make 400 more than what you have.
Yep, exactly.
I'm gonna kill you. Do you have responses?
you're dead. It's just over.
So it does at least like it gets the grind and then just oh whoops I won. And even still like crazy enough like this deck essentially can just win on turn 3 realistically too, which is like kind of scary. Like it's not real, like it's not like consistently winning on turn 3, but you can go turn 1 delayed halfling, turn 2 Sahili, and your opponent has to be worried. Like they now are presenting like they are presenting a lethal interaction next turn.
Oh yeah. Even getting to go up to 4 loyalty on something that is going to be played presumably on the play on turn 2 is not something easily dealt with on turn 2 by your opponent as well.
Exactly. Like this deck has game, I think, and we're playing good spells. It's not like we're not playing a combo deck that's playing shitty like draft commons. Yawgmoth.
Stop it. I'm not going to take this slander.
But like we're Delayed Halfling has been proven to be a good card. Omnath is obviously a good card. Solitude's a good card. Dramatic Ending, it sees play. Fable got banned in Standard, and people wanted it banned in Pioneer. You
Mm.
have Leyline Binding, which I don't know if you've noticed, every deck we showed with white is playing the mana to play Leyline Binding. It's clearly a good card in this format. I mean, Saheeli is like one of the worst spells we're playing, and we're only playing 2 of them, along with the Kiki Jiki. We're only playing 1 of it. So we're playing three like shitty spells and 3 other Felidar Guardians, which are meh. But like, if you bounce a Solitude or you bounce an Omnath, you're still drawing a card or getting rid of something else. Not terrible. And then along with playing 4 Teferi, 4 Ring, and 3 Run 6, like we are playing good cards. It's not like we just built a deck around, hey man, I got this weird combo and no good cards to support it. Like it has a good supporting cast.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's definitely got the tools. Just any deck that I think can win kind of out of nowhere and, just with some innocuous cards. I mean, like a 1/4 Felidar Guardian is not easy to deal with in a format where people are prioritizing playing Lightning Bolt over the Unholy Heat. Aside from
Mm-hmm.
like Murktide aside, everyone's playing like Lightning Bolt instead of Unholy Heat. And, Lightning Bolt doesn't get the job done.
I mean, it does still.
Does it against the Felidar? Oh, I mean, it does against like the Sealy Rye, but
Well, it kills Saheeli and it kills Kiki Jiki.
yeah, but like those cards are bad. We just established that. Our
Yeah,
meh card.
I'm just saying one bolt still does interact well with the
Yeah.
combo. But it is true though, like you're playing a bunch of good cards that you can just backdoor into a combo. It's essentially doing what, Yawgmoth does, where it plays a bunch of like Yawgmoth plays a bunch of more mediocre cards in my opinion, but like it just has like I'm gonna beat you down and then I'm gonna backdoor it into a combo that you still have to be worried about.
Tons of this is what we call synergy. And I'm gonna throw that word around like I'm running a business meeting. The Yawgmoth has like a ton of synergy. This deck has, I think a little less synergy. I think it's just playing like individually powerful cards on average, and then it
Mhm.
just so happens that it's mediocre cards that you're probably not going to care about. Will eventually win at the game
Basically.
through just about anything as well.
Indeed. Which I mean, it's nice to see, like some different things top aiding, or yeah, because it's top aided. So, it's nice to see some different things top aiding and doing somewhat well. But like, we still look at this top 16, and we have a creativity deck still in here. We have a 4 color deck, which is a little different in mono black control in here. But then, and we have one Urgatron deck who Lux sacked his way into the top 16. They just went 1-2-7 every game. So
Well, you gotta at least give yourself a chance to do well with Tron. That's the only way you can do it.
very true. But I will say that's about all I found in Modern this week that I thought was either interesting or just seeing something different, seeing something that we don't see all the time um, show up, which was nice as a whole to see that. I will say that I did take a look at Pioneer as well because we want to talk about basically 2 of the biggest formats. We are well aware that Standard exists. Neither one of us has really put time into Standard. I am trying to start look at Standard and work on it for the RCQ season, but um, to my knowledge, Standard seems like it's pretty open. It's pretty viable. There's more than just one deck out there. It's kind of nice. I wish I could say the same thing about Pioneer. Um, in my opinion, obviously, I'm sure people will disagree, but Pioneer, as it stands right now, seems to be about a 3-deck format. We have Rakdos Mid, which has been around since forever. We have Blue White Control, interesting enough, as probably the second best deck or the best deck in the format, and then the Amelia combo as either the second or first best deck in the format. And we're pretty much tied in this 3-way of decks that you can play in Pioneer and expect to do well with. Obviously, I noticed that, there's been the occasional, like, Boros Convoke deck has done well, or Phoenix does well enough that I could put that as, like, the fourth best deck of the format. Um, and you'll see, like, some aggro decks sprinkled into the top 8 every now and then where they'll get in on 8th place, or they'll get in on, like, 6th place. But there's really just about 3 decks in Pioneer, and it's kind of crazy that we went from, I want to say there's at least, probably 6 or 7 decks you could play before the bannings that we had. So now we're down to 3. That if you want to win a tournament.
1000%. And the fact that the huge banning that we had on, like, I think it was December 4th of last year, where it was supposed to be this big shakeup to both formats. It was supposed to completely flip the metagame on its head, especially being like a week or two before RC Atlanta, which was a Pioneer. We got rid of the Geological Appraiser, combo deck, where we had the Quintorius Con version, which is arguably weaker than its counterpart in Geological Appraiser. We had Karn the Great Creator get banned, which directly just neutered mono green. Like, that wasn't really affecting anybody else, because I don't think there's anybody else abusing Karn the way mono green was. And then Smuggler's Copter getting unbanned.
Yeah.
And you know what happened? The
Rakdos mid-range got better, like everyone said it was going to, between Smuggler Copter getting unbanned and the 2-mana legendary Inte.
Inti, yeah.
Inte, okay. Yep, I could not remember how to pronounce that correctly. So between that and Smuggler's Copter has made the deck just outrageously broken. We have the new combo, the Amelia Life combo, which I'll quickly go over in case anyone doesn't know what this is. You have Amalia, which is a 2-mana, 2/2. She has Ward, you have to pay 3 life, and then whenever you gain life, she explores, and then destroy all your other creatures if its power is exactly 20. So you combine her with Wild Growth Walker, which is a 2-mana creature, 1/3. It has whenever a creature you control explores, put a +1/+1 counter on it and gain 3 life. So those two combined with any explore or gaining life or anything then triggers a cataclysm to where Amelia will continuously explore. You'll continuously gain 3 life from Wild Growth Walker, and then you will eventually get Amelia up to 20 power, and you'll wipe the whole board. And then you have a 20/20 that can kill your opponent in one swing, theoretically.
Yeah.
So, and it displays a cast of creatures to go along with it, and it has an extra like combo piece with it with Diana Soul Steeper, which whenever you gain a life, each opponent loses 1 life. So if you have her out while you're comboing, you can almost always kill your opponent just from those triggers alone. And then to top it off, we have Quarter Calling, Collected Company, and Return the Ranks, which Return the Ranks, for anyone who just doesn't know, is a double white X sorcery with Convoke, and then you can return X target creatures with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So basically, with Amalia, you can just keep bidding things until you find a Collected Company, a Return to the Ranks, or an Aetherflux Reservoir, which 4-mana artifact. Whenever you cast a spell, gain 1 life for each spell you cast this turn. So if you cast 1 spell, you gain 1 life. If you cast 2 spells, you gain 2 life. So you gain 3 life altogether, and then you can pay 50 life, and then Aetherflux Reservoir deals 50 damage to any target. So pretty much you combo off until you put either a Aetherflux Reservoir on top of your deck, a Return to the Ranks, a Collected Company, or whatever else you might want on top of your deck. You gain a bunch of life, and if they kill your 2020, you're just set up to go again next turn with either Collect the Company, Return to their ranks, or Aether Flux Reservoir to just kill them. Uh, this deck, if anyone's not been paying attention, has pretty much just pushed out any kind of aggro deck in the format. Uh, Aggro can't win faster than the turn 3 combo in Pioneer. It's just not powerful enough. And then on top of that, it still plays a bunch of like creatures. It's not just, you know, playing a 3 mana spell combo. So it's not good. Like Amelia combo has pushed out a lot of the other decks to this format. And Rakdos midrange keeps up with it because it plays a bunch of removal and ways to grind through you gaining 60 life.
I mean, yeah, just the fact that we should be, at least as Wizards is trying to put it, we try to bring aggro back to the modern format. That's why we had the bannings that we had, right? Is because we wanted aggro decks to come back to the format, and they should be kind of taking the same initiative for the Pioneer format into trying to get those aggressive decks to come back. I'm assuming that was why Smuggler's Copter was unbanned, was because it would kind of help maybe those aggro decks just kind of like beat a few board stalls, when you're facing against like a Shieldred and the Bone Crusher Giant and things like that. It's pretty hard to kind of beat through those cards being like a small little aggro deck.
Oh,
But
yeah.
it also just made the best deck in the format even better to play, because
Yeah,
now
we
it
just
gets to do the thing that you tried to have other people do to it.
exactly. And I think Wizards missed the mark entirely. I think the Pioneer needs a big shakeup, and I personally would like to see like a modern master, like a master set for Pioneer. Um, which I don't know if people remember the before we had Horizon sets, we had master sets, which were the goal was to reprint cards essentially in modern cards so that would bring down the price. Like that's why we have like 6 printings of Tormagoyf, and it's actually not $100 anymore, and other things like that. So the problem is I want like a modern masters or a pioneers master set, but I want cards that are no longer playable, quote unquote, in modern to get put into pioneer. I like to see cards like Bob, Snapcaster Mage, Mana Leak put into pioneer. Um, Permaglyph even. There's things that like no longer are seeing major play in modern put into Pioneer, because Pioneer, to my understanding, has always tried to been like a standard extended out, or putting it into like a modern light format. And right now, I can't see a reason to want to register any kind of deck for Pioneer. It just it doesn't feel like it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, I like playing mid range as much as the next guy. I jammed an entire like season plus of standard playing like Obzon mid range, which was arguably one of the best decks to be playing forever. And playing against Rakdos mid range, the play patterns like majorly like the same. You just like your opponent plays a Shielder on turn 4, and you hope that you have a Lightning Axe if you're the Is It Phoenix deck, or you hope you can combo if you're the Amelia deck, and that's it. And if you can't do either of those things, you basically snap concede the game.
Exactly.
It's just it's nuts. Like there was in the article too, I believe there was like kind of a recommitment to Pioneer, which was we're going to kind of adopt the same policy that had taken place at the beginning of the format. Which, if you hadn't played Pioneer in its inception, like in 2019 to like 2020 before COVID, there was like a banning announcement every week. Whether there was changes or not, there was going to be a ban announcement every week until they felt the Pioneer format was relatively in a healthy place, and that's where we'd seen cards like Smuggler's Copter get banned right away. You've seen like Leyline of Abundance get banned. We've seen tons of cards, and up until COVID was going to happen, and we still had like the combo winter where you were winning on turn 5 with inverter combo, or you're winning on like turn 3 with Lotus Field. And it just at that point there was like not really a care of the format, and we had seen that up until about 2023 where the supposed recommitment was happening. And so far it's been almost 2 months and the format has really not changed, and we
Not for
haven't
the
gotten an
better.
announcement. Not for the better.
I will also talk about, because I know people have brought this up with Modern, where they're like, 5 decks of the format is like 50, like almost 50% of the format, right? Like that's been a big thing where people have talked about like, oh, 5 decks is almost 50% of the format.
Yep, yep.
According to MTG Top 8, this is with their last 2 weeks. Of the 3 decks or of the 4 decks I named, the Arclight Phoenix, Rakdos Aggro, or mid range, or whatever you want to call it, the Blue Eye Control and Amelia combo, those 4 decks are making up 55% of the meta right now.
Jeez.
And if we add in the 5th deck with Lotus Field, we're looking at 62% of the meta is literally 5 decks. We're like 20% higher than what Modern is right now, and that's deemed terrible for Modern.
My
People
God.
have been talking about how like, oh, this is terrible that Modern, you know, 5 decks are making up 50% of the meta or almost 50% of the meta, whereas with Pioneer we have 5 decks making up over 50% of the meta. Like you can pretty much just guarantee you're going to play those 5 decks. So I mean, what we're saying, if you go to a tournament with 4 or 5 rounds, the smaller tournament, you're going to probably play each one of those decks once at that rate.
Yeah.
Like that's wild.
Yeah, I mean, like, oh, two thirds of the time that you sit down and play a match, you're gonna play against one of those like one of those 5 decks, and then better than a coin flip to play one of those 4 decks in a given round.
Hmm.
And really, just the higher that you climb, the more that you manage to win. You are, I would imagine, you are very likely. I mean, sure, some of them will kind of cannibalize each other, and maybe you'll get like an oddball that sneaks through here and there. But by and large, you're essentially preparing for the Rakdos matchup, the Amelia combo matchup, and Blue White control.
Hmm. And Art Like Phoenix is the next one.
Yeah,
Ironically, I didn't realize this. Art Like Phoenix is actually higher percentage than the Amelia combo.
I think it's like
Which,
second, right? It's like second overall.
yeah, yeah, it's Rakdos, Arclight, followed by, or, I'm sorry, it's Rakdos, Blue White Control, Arclight Phoenix is the top three
Wow,
at 16, 15%, and 14%.
Blue White is up to like the second most played deck in the format.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you can predict that you're going to play against 6 decks or 5 decks, it's pretty easy to build your main deck and sideboard just to eat them.
Honestly, because in a perfect world, I'm not a game designer, so take what I say with a grain of salt. But I absolutely love, game design. And even though I'm a person that kind of likes to play with broken things because I am a player, play Magic, you're supposed to play with the broken things, and then the designers are supposed to fix those things. In a perfect world, there's at least one deck in each of like the main archetypes, aggro, control, mid range, combo, whatever, that all perform reasonably well, but they aren't so dominant that they kind of push out everything else. And
Well,
those individually aren't so good in their own archetype, where if you're going to play combo, you play this deck because any other combo is just pointless to play. And obviously,
mhm.
perfect world, you could play whatever you want and win. But ideally, if you have at least one or two decks in each of those main archetype, those basic archetypes rather, you have a relatively healthy format. You have a lot of diversity, and it makes it a little bit harder for some decks to kind of zero in and try to gain those percentage points, because then you're just kind of relying on, you know, finding the right matchups and bringing the right hate cards for those matchups, rather than kind of testing yourself and your skills as a player, and seeing how well you understand the individual matchups and how well you understand not only your opponent's deck but your deck going into those matchups.
Hmm. Like how we had with Modern, I want to say what probably I want to say probably pre. Actually, Modern Horizon 1, we still had a pretty diverse field, and you could definitely expect to see more than just one deck in the top 8, or like the same decks in the top 8. Like you would see, like Jun win a tournament, and then next week it would be something entirely different. You would see like uh like Affinity would take down the next tournament. Or you would see like some kind of mid range control deck would take down the next tournament. And like you weren't seeing like, oh, okay, let's see the top 8. Okay, yep, Rhinos, Scam, Murktide. Oh, Creativity. Haven't seen that one in a while. Like it's not these one of decks where like, oh, I haven't seen that deck in a while. It's, oh, okay. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, there's 8 different decks in the top 8. There's 10 different decks in the top 16. Like things that you expect to see, not you know, you can almost settle your watch to how many Rakdos Scam's going to be in the top 8 or top 16 of any tournament.
Yeah, I mean we're definitely trending for both formats, and I even said this before. Like I think modern is like relative. I think borderline. I think it's borderline like on unhealthy, where I think it's fine, but historically speaking for the format, and really with how deep the card pool is for that format, it really should be a lot bigger than what it is. But I won't necessarily complain about there being 6, 7, 8 different decks that are above like 5%. And there's probably maybe even more that are like above 5%. I think it's like 9 or 10.
Well,
And 5% isn't really like a hard threshold for me. I just think that's kind of like you're getting a reasonable amount of like decks in that specific type of deck that are putting up meaningful results in, higher competitive tournaments.
mm-hmm.
But I mean, Pioneer, just like you said, there's like five, 6 decks in the format, and you're 2/3 of the time going to play against like one of those 5.
Yeah. So I do think Wizards needs to figure out what they're doing with Pioneer. I think they need to acknowledge that it's an issue currently going forward, and I don't know if they're going to. Pioneer always felt like it was like obviously everyone wishes that we didn't have COVID and the shutdowns and everything because it changed so much and shook up so much, especially in gaming community and things like that. I do wish we could have seen what would have happened without COVID ever coming, because I think Pioneer would have been a lot more maintained, to say the least. Because if you don't have COVID, that basically kills Magic for 2 years. Um, at least the competitive scene of Magic. Then Pioneer has to be catered to, right? Because you have all these people who were interested when Pioneer was made. You had all these people who were interested up until COVID, and then they stopped paying attention to the formats, or they stopped interacting with the formats because they didn't have to. Competitive Magic was dead for the most part. You had Magic Online people were playing on or whatever, but like they didn't need to care about tournaments. They didn't have to care about tournament results. The player base wasn't really complaining. They were all stuck at home. Like no one's complaining about anything really. I'm sure people were still complaining because we talked about combo winner and things, but like no one was like voicing their commands and writing articles and showcasing like, oh, we got this 20K for Pioneer and 5 people showed up for it. You didn't have these problems because COVID shut everything down and it made Wizards not have to care. And I think since COVID, Wizards has not put either enough time or energy into maintaining Pioneer to be what I think it could be, or at least what I would want it to be, where it's just more interactive and better. Like if you want to make a mid-range format, or a format that's not about combo and powerhouses, do it. But like they arbitrarily banned combos in Pioneer, in my opinion. Like we've deemed that certain combos are bad, but like, and they deem it based off of like the unfunness of it, right? Like Mono Green Devotion was unfun. It was unfun to play against. I won't disagree with that. I think it was unfun to play against. Your opponent got to have a perfect sideboard every game, and like you can beat Mono Green. It wasn't like an unbeatable deck, but it was unfun to play against. But my problem is that we have Lotus Field, which is, I think, horrendously more unfun to play against. I've watched Lotus Field continuously win turn 3, but that's not deemed unfun.
Yeah, because like we somehow end up getting stomped by like the 5 people that continue to play aggro decks, and where aggro is actively bad against the rest of the field.
Well, that's my whole problem. Is Wizards to me has never had a definitive answer of what they wanted to do with Pioneer. they pick and choose what they ban or unban, and they don't really have a good set of reasoning for it. Like if you want to ban combo, then ban combo. Just ban combo outright. Like you can ban all the combo decks. That's fine. But if you want to do this metric on what you consider fun or unfun, I'd be willing to bet that most players can't stand Lotus Field as a combo deck. It's completely unfun to play against. You live or die if you draw your hate pieces and if they draw their interaction to the hate pieces. I know if you watch any streamer that plays Pioneer when they play against Lotus Field, they don't enjoy it. It kills streaming for a whole. Most of the chat hates Lotus Field. Like this is just an example, by the way. I'm not saying we need to ban Lotus Field, but like this is my problem: is they don't have any cohesion or any vision. It seems like poor Pioneer. They kind of pick and choose what they want to do, almost as if they throw it at a dartboard.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I definitely agree with what you're saying. Like, just Pioneer itself is has all this potential, and I mean, like with all the exploring that players did when the format began, and even kind of after we established that, hey, these decks are probably the best decks to be playing in the format currently, but there's so much more out there, and ever since Combo Winter, again with the super jacked up like Lotus Field and the inverter decks, and then you had like Sultai mid range like playing Uro and stuff like that. You just saw kind of the same 3 or 4 decks, at different times, when bannings happen, that continue to see play. And I think kind of in a way like a gross oversight, at least when we had this ban announcement, that if you were going to make the decision to just make a sweeping overhaul change of both formats, I probably would have went deeper than just banning 2 cards.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're willing to commit to like we're going to ban a lot of things and then we'll kind of see how things play out and then we're going to unban as we go, I would have liked to have seen that, because even though you said that we're going to take a more hands-on approach, we're going to take more liberties and be more cutthroat in ban decisions going forward and increase the frequency of bannings. And we've gone 6-7 weeks without something changing, where we have 2 or 3 decks that have a 13+% metagame share and show no signs of slowing down. Just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the best example is, so looking at like this is MTG top 8 again. The Rakdos, Arclight Phoenix, and Blue Eye Control all have 16, 15, and 14% of the meta, which is it's huge. It's huge that these 3 decks like this is the same problem we have in Modern. Like Rakdos Scam is still 15% of the meta, according to Wizards' own announcements from January. Like they put out an article sometime this week. I believe it was in the last couple of days, where like we have Rakdos as 15.3% of like winning, like putting up in top 16, top 32. Like that's ridiculous. And we have the same thing going on with Pioneer right now. And like we talk about how bad, like everyone talks about how bad Modern is, but no one's talking about how. I think no one's talking about Pioneer because it's not important. Like the only important thing for Pioneer coming up is Chicago with the Pro Tour. But if you're not qualified for the Pro Tour, you don't give a shit. Like it's not something you have to care about. You don't have to care about the meta. There's no RCQs announced right now for Pioneer. No one has to be playing Pioneer. Obviously, people are still playing. There's the prelims that go off, the leagues that go off, the um, challenges and stuff that happen. People are still playing it, but like people have to at least acknowledge that this isn't a healthy format.
Yeah, and I think I would hope that a lot of people would kind of agree with that kind of take, that there's something not right. It doesn't feel right. Like I definitely miss playing like older formats. I miss like the the late 2010s of like Modern, where even when like Death Shadow was like dog shit, it's like it was still fun to play. Humans was running around, shit like that. And Pioneer, just ever since Mono Black and like Smuggler's Copper and stuff like got banned, and we had like just Lotus Field and Inverter just completely ravaging each other. The format just hasn't felt good, and it hasn't felt like really fun to play unless you're just playing something super goofy, in which case you're not actually trying to win, you're just actively trying to have fun.
Agreed. But I do think we should probably move on from this. There's not much that, we can fix for
We
this
can
format.
we can spin the tires. We can probably move to kind of wrapping this up. We've been going for a little while.
Yeah, I will. I just want to do one quick talk about the RC that we had in Europe, or that we have going on in Europe, I should say. This weekend, it started today. Like all the RCs, they start on a Friday with last chance qualifiers, things like that, and then Saturday, the 27th of January, they will be doing the main event. And they had their last chance qualifier, which was like 300 and 88 players, I believe, was in this. They have like the breakdown for percentages, or like number of decks, and then percentage, like meta percentages they had. Um, so probably unsurprising to most people, Teamer Rhinos did have 51 copies, which was the most, with 13% of the meta. And then we had Rakdos Scam, to no one's surprise, was 40 copies with 10% of the meta. Same thing with Yawgmoth, coming in at third with 36 copies, 9% of the meta. Isn't Murktide with 25 copies and 6% of the meta. And then Amulet Titan coming in with 21 copies and 5% of the meta. Basically, that's our top five. I will say I am surprised that Hammer Time came in at six with 17 copies. That is kind of a deck that's fallen off as of late. Um, so it is nice to see, Hammer Time kind of coming back. I don't think it's terrible in the meta. I don't think it's necessarily good, but I don't think it doesn't have abysmal matchups going forward. Um, Domain Zoo was, we've seen that kind of uptick over the last couple weeks, where aggro decks still are good in modern. Hardened Scales, which I don't think is any surprise. I think that deck has a lot of room to grow. I think that deck is honestly really good, but I think it suffers from the same problem that Amulet Titan suffers from. Is it takes some actual skill to learn, and like there's a lot of like you have like your hardened scales players who understand that counters on things make your creatures bigger, and you can shoot with ballista and do those fun little things. And then you have the players who like understand the micro transactions and like know how to squeeze out every piece of value you can with that deck.
Yeah, I would think kind of while I'm sitting here and like listening to that, it's like the hardened skills deck. You at least have all the pieces kind of like in front of you. Like Titan, you're just kind of like getting your lands and kind of figuring out like what two are going to be the most impactful in this scenario. Whereas like the hardened scales deck, you have your Ravager and all these other, your Ozolith and things like that, like all face up, and you can like take the time to sit there and like do the math. Where and like with zero commitment to as to like what you're doing. Where like the Titan deck, like you just can't pick up your library and start like thumbing through it to look for what lands you have, because like you could potentially play Titan this turn. It's like if you want to do that, you have to play it, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
definitely have a pretty good understanding of like what lands are in your deck, like what lands are left, and then just what is in it. Period. So it's I would definitely say Amulet Titan is the hardest deck, and I think it's only because of like the hidden information that you don't inherently have access to. Where like the hardened scales deck, like you, it's
You're
helpful to know
playing
that
fan out.
yeah, you need to know that hidden information. But that said, it's usually all like 99% of the time it's all laid out in front of you.
I do agree with that in that sense, but I will say, excuse me, that with hardened scales, I watched my friends play against hardened scales in tournaments. I've watched people play hardened scales, and I've watched with perfect information, right? Like I know what's in their hand, I know what's on the field, I know what's in their graveyard, all this information, and I will still watch them just make plays that I would have never seen.
Mm.
And I do agree that Hardened Scales has all its information face up, but I think even having your information face up, there's a lot of lines that just players don't see.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely. I think you have players that kind of like zero in on like certain things. Like I know that's where I come up short, is that I kind of like a detective, where instead of just like looking for the information, I'm looking for the information I want to find, not actually looking for the information that's present. And I think players do that to the detriment of themselves and walk into things that if they just step back and actually looked instead of trying to look for something that isn't there, it wouldn't happen.
Fair. I'll give you that one. I will give you that one. I do want to point out real quick, just because I think it's funny. There were 3 people who registered 8 rack
Solid.
because they like misery.
You know what? I don't think you're entirely wrong.
But I do just want to point that out because I think it's funny. I think that anytime 8 rack gets registered, I think it's funny.
Now,
Um,
now it depends. Is it actually 8 rack, or is it someone that's like, yeah, this is 8 rack and it's 4 color control?
I
We'll
believe
have
it
to
is
find out.
actually 8 rack because it's going off of MCG Melee, and I know um most of the tournament organizers and things they go through and make sure that the deck is what it's supposed to be. Every now and then you'll get something that's skated through, but I can't imagine there's 3 people who thought 8 rack would be funny to register.
You know what? Fair enough. I've been called out, and I will accept it.
But that is pretty much all the deck lists that I myself found interesting this week along with Dakota here. I do think that Modern is in a healthy format and not a healthy spot at the same time. I'm not entirely sure what we need to do. I'm also not sure if we just if Wizards needs to just admit that grief was a mistake and it needs to just eat the dust and eat a ban.
Uh,
I'm
yeah.
not I'm not sure if we need to come to that or what needs to change in Modern, what needs to be banned or added to the format to shake it up and make it more diverse. Like I said, I do think there is a problem of there being too many top decks, but I also think Modern might be in the situation where um, not so much that people are net decking in the sense of like they just don't do any research or anything like that, but so much in the sense of like people know Rhinos is a good deck and it's pretty easy to pick up as a whole. I think you can reasonably you can give Rhinos to somebody who has never played Rhinos before and they can still take down a tournament. Not necessarily like an RC or anything like that, but I think that like if you bought Rhinos today and had a 1K next weekend, you'd be fine. You could take down that 1K.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it. The raw power of like what it's doing is like good enough to where even if you're like prepared for it, you can't beat 4 crashing footfalls on 4 straight turns.
Exactly, and
Most
I,
of
I
yeah,
think that I think the same thing can be said for Rakdos scam as well. Is like it's not too hard to realize that turn one double griefing someone is good, and like you have to like somehow take both their worst cards, and you're still double thought seeing like thought seizing them with a 4/3 left behind.
mm, it's still one
Like
of the best things to be doing in the format.
yeah, so I don't necessarily know if those decks are to the point where they need to be banned. Excuse me, banned or what needs to happen. And then the problem I have too is like what you don't need to ban anything out of is it Murktide. Like it's not doing anything broken. It's no different than what Grixis Death Shadow was doing for the longest time. It plays good 1 drops and interaction and plays some creatures. Like, you know, it's not doing anything inherently broken.
Yeah, just getting to it's a deck that's like a high skill ceiling that when you have a really skillful player playing it, and they have any reasonable draw versus like what you have going on, they're always going to be in it to win it until, they end up making a mistake.
Hmm.
So it definitely you can draw those comparisons to like Grixis Shadow back in the day, where a little bit more, a little bit less, like I'd say in like the early game, but like the middle to late stages of the game, you can you see a lot of Death Shadow in like the Murktide deck.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, overall, like the metagame breakdown of like the last chance qualifier is probably something very similar to what we're going to see in this tournament this weekend, and then possibly even the RC in Denver as well. Something similar to some amalgamation of those like 5 or 6 decks, like shuffling around and continuing to be one of the top 5 or 6 decks in the format.
I would agree. I do think that Scam will probably be the biggest deck going into both this RC, both this RC and Denver. I think it's going to be Scam on top, and then Rhinos right behind it. Um, and that being said, I'm not sure if those decks need something banned out of them again or something hit out of them to make them not as good. But then, like if you look past like at those top two decks, the rest of the decks aren't broken. Like Yawgmoth isn't broken. Like it's not doing anything inherently broken. Like it has a combo, yes, but like it's not like uninteractable or anything like that. It's not too overly powerful. And then I mean Titan I think should have been hit like 6 years ago, but Blizzard kind of refused to send out as a Titan's deck. So that one's never getting hit.
That's probably a deck that's just locked behind like, well, this is difficult to play, so like it's going to be
Yeah, it's
metagame.
never getting hit.
Yeah, like a metagame share wise, like it's never going to be a 10 to 15% deck, because I don't think there's 10 to 15% of players that can reasonably play that deck at the level that you need to play it at to just be able to win at a high level.
Agreed. I mean, even right now by Wizards' own standings, according to, their percentage breakdown, they have Amulet Titan at 7.6%. So like I would argue that Amulet Titan is probably being played the most it's ever been played, before, like not counting when it was obviously broken and you had
Summer Bloom and yeah,
Summer Bloom, and you were winning on turn two types thing. But not counting that time period. This is probably the most that Amulet Titan's ever been played, and we're still only up to 7.6%. Like not
absolutely nuts.
exactly not exactly, driving home numbers. And but I do think that like, when you take out Teamer and Rakdos Scam, or Rhinos and Rakdos Scam, I don't think any deck is doing anything inherently broken currently. Like again, I'm not counting Amulet Titan because it's never a big enough meta share to where it's just winning tournament after tournament after tournament.
And that's probably honestly like of the remaining decks probably doing the most busted thing.
Yeah, it's doing the most busted thing for sure,
Yeah,
because it will just like win out of like they'll have two lands and three cards in hand, and then you'll look away, and then they have three Titans on the field attacking. Like I blinked. What happened?
yeah, I mean, and that's been the deck forever. Is just, all right, you have one turn, like, and you need to find specifically this one card, and it's like, well, they found it, and they have a board full of 8/6s attacking, and then they have 4 different Titan triggers. It's
Exactly.
the deck's dumb, but unfortunately or fortunately for the people that play it, it's probably never gonna see so much play where like it needs to be addressed right away.
Agreed. I do think that the metagame as a whole is healthy. I really do. I mean, I think that we've gotten to the point where I think it's because Rhinos and Scam are so high is where the metagame's been warped. But obviously, we'll see. After this RC and Denver, see if Wizards, excuse me, decides to ban anything, change anything, unban something.
Gotta try to like hold them accountable in a way of at least their two most popular Eternal formats that they're willing to actively support and base their whole pro 2/3 of their pro system around in, the Pioneer season and the Modern season, respectively.
Exactly.
Well, I think we've reached the conclusion of the episode. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share, Randy? Anything that you want to get off your chest?
Just that Shieldred still needs to go down in price.
Well, you remember what happened the last time you said that.
Well, I figure at this point it's either going to just keep going astronomically high, or we'll have to get a reprint.
And
I'm taking the Termagoy approach. It
Shieldred to
can only get
150.
it can only get so high before they'll acknowledge it needs a reprint.
You know what? That's a good point. It'll be in the form of a secret lair, and it'll be like a special promo art, and then that card will be more expensive than the original one. So then technically the original printing will be the cheapest printing.
That's all I'm asking for, Wizards. That's all I'm asking for. Just actually no support.
And effectively, in a way, like if you forget about the original printing, the price does go down from $200 to 150.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Um, well, I'm never good with saying goodbyes because I am from the Midwest and they usually take 20 minutes. So I'm going to do the best I can to kind of, put a nice little bow on everything. If you somehow made it to the end of this episode, which I told Randy, if we went in like around an hour and a half, I'd be happy. And we're pushing like 2 hours. So
One day
one day we'll stick to a schedule, but like we're degenerates. This is fun. I look forward to, like, after we finish doing like episode 0, I look forward to doing like episode 1, and like I said, I rack my brain like all week of what the heck to say, and try to like have some scripted ideas to start and kind of going from there. So I would appreciate it, and Randy would appreciate it too, if you made it to this part of the episode. And I'll probably even throw like a little thing in the beginning. If there's any questions that you want to ask us, either about like Modern or Pioneer, our thoughts and opinions, please leave them in the comments of the video, and we will take the time to either answer them in the comments or in the video itself, to kind of have like a Q&A segment, I guess, in a way. Any feedback that you would want to see, anything that you specifically want in this kind of like production, please feel free to let us know. Like, we're willing to kind of play with the formula and change things up and kind of get it to, what the people want.
Oh yeah, we are open to any kind of criticism. You don't have to worry. You're not gonna get backlash from us. Like I said, I'm already looking forward to the creativity players in our comment section to yell at me for not knowing why Strashnon's played, or the one Boggles player who topped the prelim to yell at me for making fun of his deck. It's okay. I am ready for the criticism, and we're ready for change up anything we need to make this better or more enjoyable for the 4 people listening to us right now.
And with all that said, if you've still managed to make it this far, be sure to subscribe to not only my channel, Crowdeye23, Randy's channel, Modern with Randy, because I know that he's kicked around the idea of trying to post over there again. So if people start subscribing to him, like, he's gonna have to do it.
Yeah, I'm hopefully gonna get a video out this week and try to like revive that channel
So I mean,
that got put on hold.
as I just backhand the desk. So please support not only not only my channel but Randy's channel as well. Any feedback if possible. Share the podcast with your friends. Anything like that. Again, just open to any and all ideas, criticisms, thoughts, opinions. Even if you just want to say that we suck, you're definitely entitled to it. And I will take your help from the algorithm if that's what you want to do, is slander us. So. That's going to do it for me. I think it's going to do it for Randy too, unless you want to poke fun at Shieldred one more time.
No, I know it's never gonna go down in price. It's okay.
Well, alrighty. Hope you all enjoyed the show. We'll be back next week with some more of the Modern Pioneer format, and of course some other topics as well, and hopefully some questions from people if they reach out. That'd be kind of sweet.
Indeed. But we will see you guys next week.
See ya.